In the grand, silent expanse of the Canadian North, a revolution is quietly taking shape. It's not a revolution of armies, but of steel, gravel, and geopolitical will. While the world's attention is fixated on the usual hotspots, container ships backed up at the Suez or water levels dropping in the Panama Canal, Canada is executing a plan. It's a plan years in the making, designed to remap the flow of commerce and power in North America. This is a story about a remote railway line, a deep-water port on the shores of Hudson Bay, and a multi-hundred-million-dollar investment that serves as a quiet declaration of economic independence. It's a strategic maneuver aimed at breaking a century of dependency, a move to bypass the continent's traditional logistical pathways. This is the story of how Canada is building a railway to give itself new options. This isn't just about infrastructure. It's a pivotal move in a new great game for control of the Arctic. It's about sovereignty, security, and resilience. What's happening in the quiet cold of northern Manitoba is a seismic shift, and the tremors are about to be felt across the globe. To understand the audacity of Canada's plan, you first have to zoom out and look at the world's arteries of trade. For decades, the global economy has functioned like a finely tuned machine, built on the assumption that goods can move cheaply and predictably. That assumption is now shattering. The machine is breaking down, and the world is dotted with chokeholds, points of extreme vulnerability now under unprecedented strain. The most glaring example is the Panama Canal. For over a century, it was the miracle shortcut of the Western Hemisphere. But today, that miracle is running dry. A historic climate change-induced drought has crippled the canal. The result is a slow-motion catastrophe for global shipping. The Panama Canal Authority has been forced to slash the number of ships that can pass through, turning a seamless conveyor belt of commerce into a parking lot for container ships. The canal is no longer a reliable artery, it's a bottleneck. But the crisis isn't confined to Central America. Halfway across the world, the Strait of Bab el-Mandeb, gateway to the Red Sea and the Suez Canal, has become a high-risk corridor. Attacks on commercial shipping have turned this superhighway between Europe and Asia into a combat zone. Insurance premiums have exploded, and major shipping companies have been forced to divert their vessels on a long, costly journey around Africa. This isn't just a logistical headache, it's the weaponization of a chokehold, demonstrating how a localized conflict can hold the global economy hostage. These are just the most prominent examples. The Strait of Hormuz and the Strait of Malacca remain perennial flashpoints. The message is painfully clear. The old map of global trade is defined by a series of critical vulnerabilities. The system is fragile, expensive, and increasingly unreliable. In this new era of instability, the most valuable commodity is resilience. And that can only be achieved by finding new, secure, and independent routes, which brings us to North America. The problem of chokeholds isn't just a distant overseas phenomenon for Canada. Its most significant logistical vulnerability lies right next door, with its closest ally and largest trading partner, the United States. While the relationship is overwhelmingly positive, from a purely logistical standpoint, Canada exists in a state of profound dependency. Think of North America's trade infrastructure, the ports, the railways, the highways. They weren't designed with Canadian sovereignty as the top priority. The continent's economic geography is tilted, and the tilt favors the South. A vast quantity of Canadian goods, particularly from the resource-rich prairie provinces, doesn't travel to Canadian ports. Instead, it flows south into the sprawling network of the American logistical system. A farmer harvesting wheat in Saskatchewan might find it cheaper and faster to ship it by rail south, where it then enters the American system to be shipped out from a port in the Gulf of Mexico. For decades, this was simply the path of least resistance. But in the 21st century, this path of least resistance has revealed itself to be a path of strategic dependence. This dependency creates a continental chokehold, one that exposes Canadian economic autonomy to factors outside of its control. Consider the congestion at major U.S. ports. When those ports back up due to labor disputes, infrastructure failures, or sheer volume, Canadian goods are stuck in the same queue. A dockworkers' strike in California can have a direct negative impact on a Canadian exporter thousands of kilometers away. Then there's the political dimension. In an era of increasing trade protectionism, this reliance is a massive liability. The very infrastructure that facilitates trade can be turned into a tool of political leverage. This isn't an abstract risk. It's a reality that Canadian policymakers have had to confront. The quiet truth of North American trade is that Canada, a nation with the longest coastline in the world, often finds itself logistically constrained by its closest friend. Its access to the world is frequently routed through another sovereign nation. This is the core problem Canada is now desperately trying to solve. How can a nation be truly sovereign if it doesn't control the pathways through which its wealth flows to the world? To break free from this continental chokehold, Canada needed a new route, a route that was entirely its own. It's a route that didn't go east, west, or south, but north. For centuries, the Canadian Arctic was seen as a barrier, a vast, frozen, and impenetrable wilderness. But climate change is radically altering that perception. What was once a permanent, frozen barrier is now, for part of the year, becoming a navigable waterway. The Arctic is melting, and in its thaw, a historic opportunity is emerging. This is the great paradox of our time. The same phenomenon threatening ecosystems worldwide is also opening up what could become one of the planet's most strategic trade routes. We're talking about legendary seaways like the Northern Sea Route along Russia's coast. For the first time in history, these passages are becoming reliably ice-free for longer stretches of the year. The potential is so immense that it is triggering a global scramble for position and influence in the Arctic. While much of the world has been fascinated by the fabled Northwest Passage through Canada's archipelago, Canada has identified a more immediate and practical opportunity in its own backyard: Hudson Bay. The simultaneous failure of traditional southern chokeholds combined with the dramatic opening of these new northern routes has created a moment of profound geopolitical flux. The map of global trade, stable for a century, is suddenly being redrawn. For Canada, this is a moment of truth. The nation has one of the largest Arctic territories in the world. Suddenly, its greatest geographical challenge is transforming into its greatest strategic asset. The question was no longer if the Arctic would become a major trade corridor, but who would control the access points. A passage is useless without a port, a place where the sea meets the land. Canada needed a gateway, a northern harbor connected to the heartland that could serve as its anchor in this new world. It found its answer in a small, remote town on the coast of Hudson Bay. This is where grand geopolitics meets cold, hard reality. The strategic solution to Canada's dilemma is focused on a single, audacious project: the revitalization of the Hudson Bay Railway and the Port of Churchill. This is the Hudson Bay Gambit, a move to reactivate a piece of strategic infrastructure that had been left to languish for decades. The Port of Churchill sits on the western shore of Hudson Bay, a massive inland sea that allows deep-water ships to penetrate right into the geographic center of North America. What truly sets it apart is its connection to the south, the Hudson Bay Railway, HBR. This single track runs nearly 1,000 kilometers, tying the Arctic coast directly to the agricultural and resource heartland of Canada and the entire North American grid. For much of its history, the port and railway were a modest operation. But in 2017, disaster struck when unprecedented flooding washed out huge sections of the track. The American owner at the time refused to pay for repairs, and the line fell silent. Churchill was effectively cut off. It was a near-death experience that set the stage for a grand rebirth. In a landmark deal, a consortium called the Arctic Gateway Group, a partnership of 41 First Nations and northern communities, along with federal and provincial partners, purchased the port and the railway. This is a crucial detail. The primary owners and beneficiaries of this new Arctic corridor are the Indigenous communities who have lived on this land for millennia. Hundreds of millions of dollars from federal, provincial, and private sources have been poured into this strategic revival. These funds are for a fundamental upgrade, rebuilding the railway to handle heavier and more frequent loads of not just grain, but potash, critical minerals, and energy products. Simultaneously, the port itself is being upgraded. Now, visualize the new trade route this creates. A train loaded with commodities in the Canadian heartland travels north on the newly fortified Hudson Bay Railway to Churchill. There, it's loaded onto a ship. That ship sails through Hudson Bay out into the North Atlantic via the Hudson Strait and sets a direct course for European ports like Antwerp, Bruges, with whom the port now has a formal partnership. This route cuts thousands of kilometers and many days off a journey compared to routing through the Great Lakes or the Panama Canal. It provides a completely Canadian route, insulated from congestion and political pressures to the south. This is the essence of trade independence. It's not about ending trade with the United States, but about creating an alternative. It's a direct response to the vulnerabilities of global and continental chokeholds. It's the physical manifestation of a new, more confident, and independent Canadian economic policy. The Hudson Bay Gambit, as audacious as it is, doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's part of a much larger story unfolding across Canada, a national rail renaissance. While the Hudson Bay Railway is designed to get Canadian goods out to the world, another megaproject is designed to move its people within its borders. For decades, the idea of high-speed rail in Canada's most densely populated corridor, Quebec City to Toronto, was little more than a recurring political promise. That has changed. The High-Frequency Rail HFR project, now known as ALTO, is moving from concept to concrete planning. We're talking about a 1,000-kilometer network of primarily dedicated electrified tracks, with trains traveling at speeds up to 300 kilometers per hour. Design and planning phases are well underway, and initial construction could begin in the coming years. This isn't just about convenience. This is nation building. The Quebec City-Toronto corridor is home to nearly half of Canada's population and is its economic engine. Connecting these urban centers with fast, reliable, and green transportation will foster greater economic integration and reduce dependency on carbon-intensive travel. While the HBR is about Canada's relationship with the world, ALTO is about strengthening Canada's core. At the same time, Canada is also doubling down on its traditional trade gateways. Through the National Trade Corridors Fund, NTCF, the federal government is injecting billions into targeted projects to remove bottlenecks at established ports like Vancouver and Prince Rupert. This reveals a sophisticated, two-pronged approach. On one hand, Canada is creating a radical new alternative with the Hudson Bay route. On the other, it's meticulously optimizing its established corridors to ensure they remain competitive. When you put all these pieces together, the Arctic Gateway at Churchill, the high-speed passenger spine in the east, and the optimization of the Pacific ports in the west, a clear picture emerges. This is a deliberate, coordinated national strategy to build a more resilient, integrated, and sovereign Canada. The investment in the Hudson Bay Railway is the headline, but it's just one chapter in a much larger book of Canadian ambition. No move this bold comes without immense risks and monumental challenges. To paint the Hudson Bay project as a guaranteed success would be to ignore the harsh realities of its environment. The first and most formidable opponent is nature itself. The same climate change opening the seaways is also creating profound engineering challenges on the ground. The Hudson Bay Railway is built on permafrost, permanently frozen ground that is now thawing, turning a solid foundation into an unstable mess. This requires constant, expensive, and highly specialized maintenance to prevent the tracks from buckling. Then there is the Arctic weather. We're talking about one of the most extreme environments on Earth, and while the shipping season is expanding, Hudson Bay is still locked in ice for much of the year. Achieving a near year-round shipping season is a stated goal, but it depends entirely on a new generation of powerful icebreakers, billion-dollar assets that Canada is still in the process of procuring. Beyond the physical challenges are the economic ones. Building and maintaining infrastructure in the remote north is phenomenally expensive. Critics argue that the costs could spiral and the returns may not materialize if global shipping lines, which are notoriously risk-averse, are slow to adopt the new route. And finally, there are the geopolitical stakes. How will the United States react? Publicly, it has been quiet. But a Canadian Arctic port that can deliver European goods into the North American heartland faster and potentially cheaper than they can arrive via U.S. ports is a direct economic competitor. It's a challenge, however subtle, to the long-standing dynamics of continental logistics. While an open trade war is unlikely, the U.S. will be watching this development with intense interest. Is this a brilliant masterstroke of geopolitical foresight, a visionary investment that will secure the nation's prosperity for the 21st century? Or is it a colossal gamble against the unforgiving North, an expensive dream that could be swallowed by thawing permafrost? The answer is not yet written. The story of the Hudson Bay Railway and Canada's Arctic ambition is still unfolding. This is the new front line of geopolitics, where trade, climate, and sovereignty collide. To stay ahead of the curve on the new great game in the Arctic and understand the strategic shifts that are redrawing our world, make sure you subscribe to our channel. You won't want to miss what comes next. What is happening in northern Manitoba is far more than just a railway upgrade. It's a line being drawn in the snow, a quiet but firm declaration of a new era. The revitalization of the Hudson Bay Railway is a symbol of a Canada that is adapting to a changing planet and a changing global power structure. It is leveraging its unique geography to forge a new destiny for itself, one that is more resilient, more independent, and more sovereign. This isn't about severing ties, it's about rebalancing them. It's Canada building itself more options, creating strategic redundancy in a world where nothing can be taken for granted. Whether this grand Arctic gambit will pay off in full remains to be seen, but one thing is certain, the world is taking notice. The Hudson Bay Railway is no longer just a local line to a remote town. It is a strategic asset on the new map of the world, a piece of critical infrastructure that signals the dawn of the Arctic century.